The Best of Living in Iowa is funded in part by the Gilchrist Foundation, founded by Jocelyn Gilchrist, furthering the philanthropic interests of the Gilchrist family in wildlife and conservation, the arts and public broadcasting, and disaster relief.
Funding for this program was provided by Friends, the Iowa Public Television Foundation. Generations of families and friends who feel passionate about the programs they watch on Iowa Public Television.
Hello, this is Morgan Halgren. For 16 seasons, Living in Iowa told the tale of what it means to be uniquely Iowan. Tonight, we honor that spirit by bringing you another glimpse into our rich heritage with a few stories from our archives. In this episode of The Best of Living in Iowa, we'll toll the bells with an original composition using the bells from 9 Burlington churches. Follow 8th graders as they explore the Mormon Trail in Clark County and revisit our story on the restoration of trumpeter swans in Iowa. Most concert-goers probably dream about sitting front and center, as close as they can get to their favorite musicians and the music they love. But if you're attending one of Pat Hazel's bell concerts, the best seat just might be outside a local church or fire station, or right outside your front door. That's what Burlington residents realized as they took their places for the ultimate in surround sound.
Bells were generally designed for signals to announce church starting or a fire. To think of them as musical instruments is something not commonly done.
Blues and jazz musician Patrick Hazel achieved the uncommon with his Hawkeye Valley Bell Project, orchestrating 9 of Burlington's century-old bells in a unique community-wide concert.
I've been open to improvising and experimenting with music from day one. Actually, when I was a really young kid, 3 or 4 years old, I would play our piano on the black notes with my whole forearm and get a rhythm going like it was a drum.
A native of Burlington, Pat's musical roots were nourished on the banks of the Mississippi.
I'm going back to the Mississippi Valley. I'll settle down, spend my last day.
But his inspiration for the bell concert came while on tour in Europe.
That's where I really tuned into bells being rung for a long time, you know, like a half hour, 45 minutes, and the overtones and energy that's created in a town setting because of these bells is really remarkable, a real meditative thing. So coming back to Burlington, I'm saying, hey, we got at least 9 major bells in the downtown area. Let's ring them. Let's do something with them. Make a musical experience out of it.
Burlington's bells chimed in concert for the first time in 2003. Encouraged by positive response, Pat continued his orchestrations, and in early autumn of 2005, IPTV recorded his 7th bell performance in this southeastern Iowa community.
I really felt like the first one I had let a genie out of a bottle because of these sounds, these bells, long pretty much dormant. All of a sudden they're coming to life, and it just created such an interesting, eerie time warp over the whole city.
To orchestrate the concert, Patrick first had to examine each of the bells to determine its pitch, loudness, and relative proximity. Factoring in these qualities, he writes a different hour-long music score for each performance. Burlington residents pitch in as bell ringers. Equipped with synchronized watches, teams of volunteers are stationed at each bell site.
When you ring for several minutes at a time, you have to trade off because it is an endurance.
It's aerobic.
It's aerobic, yes.
Patrick talks about how in Europe that, it's a common thing to hear bells ringing off and on during the day. But it's kind of unique for us here to have everybody kind of gather. We have people coming from all different directions during this bell ringing time.
As the concert rings across the valley, Burlingtonians take time out from busy schedules to absorb the sound of the bells. The pulse of the city slows as an almost reverent air takes hold. Pat listens from a strategic location where he can hear all of the bells. In solitude, he studies the interplay of rhythms and harmonics with an ear toward new ideas for future rings.
I try to feature each bell to some extent by itself, if it's possible, so that people can hear the different bells individually or in combination with maybe just one other bell. I want to think that at some point I'll have all the bells ringing. Okay, it's kind of like a fireworks display, where everybody's waiting for the grand finale.
What Patrick's idea helps me at least think about is the fact that all these bells with different sounds in different churches all have a role to play when they all come together.
Casting a spell-like quality over the city, the sound of the bells seems to transcend time. Connecting past to present, Pat's musical alchemy has awakened in Burlington a sense of community connection and pride. Fueled by the project's success, Patrick has orchestrated concerts upriver in Dubuque and as far away as Russia, where those same simple goals resonate with each community.
I'm into going anywhere to do it. It's fun to do, and it's a big community thing. So maybe the Johnny Appleseed of bell ringing or something. I mean, I just would like to see people use them. They're there, why not use them?
Now we're going to go on a kind of outdoor treasure hunt for a piece of Iowa history. To do this, we have to go to Clark County, and we have to go back in time 150 years. The clues are hard to find, but when you're on the right trail, you know it.
One of the students, and I think it might have been Matt, was walking with Mrs. Risser, and they were scouting and looking at this one very obvious trail. And I think Matt turned to Kay and said, "Shh." And she's, "What?" He says, "Can't you just hear those wagons coming up the trail?"
This may look like just a field to you, but to Mr. Carper's 8th graders, it tells a story of 150 years ago, when thousands of Mormons passed through on their way to a new life.
The surveyor's map from 1875 shows that trail breaking off of the main trail up there.
The ruts in this Clark County hillside mark the path between Garden Grove and Mount Pisgah.
The width, the symmetry, plus the mapping shows that this is where the trail is located.
The Murray school children and their teachers Bill Carper and Kay Risser used maps, some awareness of natural history, such as erosion and deer paths, and word-of-mouth history from area farmers to find evidence of the past.
If it was erosion, it would have started further up the hill to boot, and it would have been as deep at the top of the hill as it would have been at the bottom of the hill, or it should have been. And it should have been cut much deeper at the bottom than it is this way. Plus, they are staggered just right across from one another. They actually had to hitch extra animals to their wagons to pull them downhill because it was just that much of a quagmire when it was raining. So that also explains why there are a series of trails that are paralleling one another.
The Mormon Trail began in 1846, the same year Iowa became a state. That year, several thousand Mormons decided they had to leave their Nauvoo, Illinois settlement. Violence against the Mormons had already resulted in the death of their leader, Reverend Joseph Smith. With little time for preparation, they left Nauvoo in the middle of winter, crossing the frozen Mississippi River to an Iowa town named Montrose.
Between Montrose and Council Bluffs, I think there are 40-some encampments along the Mormon Trail. Garden Grove being one of the largest, then Mount Pisgah, and then I believe Canesville was what the Mormons called Council Bluffs.
There will be horse and wagon reenactments along the trail in 1996 during the sesquicentennial. The Murray class spent some time with visiting Mormons and shared some of their discoveries. Mormon historians had kept old diaries which told of the hardships of their westward journey and gave descriptions of Mount Pisgah.
Riding through beautiful prairies, I came suddenly to some round and sloping hills, grassy and crowned with beautiful groves of timber. Being pleased and excited at the scenery before me, I cried out, "This is Mount Pisgah!"
The students learned how the Mormons lived, what they ate, how they built their buildings, and even how they buried their dead.
When they buried like a husband, they lay him first, and then they lay the wife on his heart, beside his heart, and they bury the children next to the mother.
The Mormons that came through first would plant the corn, and the next Mormons that came through would eat the corn. Then they'd plant more for the next Mormons.
The class found traces of the past in little things as well as big.
This looks like a belt buckle.
This looks like a design that has been on a metal stove at one time, but has been broken off.
This here is probably a handle off some tool that they used back then.
I think this is probably a piece of china they had and it's been broken.
Many of the students had never spent much time wandering through fields and prairies. They encountered racing cows, hot temperatures, rain, and other inconveniences.
Journal, June 13th, 1.5 miles traveled, found different parts of the trail. Nice person gave us a ride to the trail on his pickup, saved us some walking. June 22nd, we got wet. We were in a cornfield, we didn't find anything.
As their journals reveal, some days were more inspiring than others.
June 3rd, we are in Troy Township, Section 18. We found another part of the Mormon Trail. While we crossed the 7 Mile Creek, I fell in and then slipped and hit my knee on a rock.
And everyone learned something special.
I learned to help one another. I like the idea of hands-on history, and I think it's just a lot better than reading the book and just looking at the pictures when you get to see a wide view.
And this is the trail right in through here. They're walking, actually, they're not walking on the trail. This is the trail right here, and it comes right down through here, and then we can follow it on the way back up the hill. But that's the reason we staked it like this.
Following the trail involved lots of walking and a handful of special skills.
But they really worked. They learned how to read a map, townships and county lines, section lines. They learned how to, all of them, read a compass and shoot an azimuth for direction. We covered the better part of 20 miles of mapped area in Clark County from Union to Decatur County, and they did discover a lot of trail area on their own.
While discovering trails was their main concern, they also came up with some other possible finds.
Originally, they felt there was around 300 to 800, but since Bob Brown and several others have been witching, they have come across, they feel there's around 3,000 to 4,000 graves here, because this was a major settlement.
They deduce where possible graves and houses used to be by using the ancient art of witching.
Doors about from here to here. Matt, you want to come through and make...
When the wires cross and uncross, it's an indication of where the ground has been disturbed. The students walk in patterns to map out the terrain.
I went home one day and I plotted out all the pipes around our house and stuff for fun.
Bob Brown owns property by Mount Pisgah, and he brims with enthusiasm about the students' discoveries.
Because of this group right here, there was 120 kids from the Creston School out here last week, and they've caught on just like these kids. Now they're real excited, and it's just totally amazing how history can excite children.
The day that Nikki and Jackie and Michelle and Jennifer and Misty came over the first hill, we had an idea that the trail was out here, but we didn't know where. I stepped over the top of the ridge and I looked to my right and my left, and there it was. It was just there. It just opened right up, and I think Michelle, I know she was one of the first ones. She walked across it, and then she kind of stopped, and she looked back and walked back in, and then she hollered at him. She said, "Mr. Carper, there's the trail."
As Mr. C says, it's better than sitting in a stuffy classroom listening to a boring lecture.
It was a great class. It was a lot of fun, and they were a good bunch of students to have out on this project, and I think there's still a lot out there to be found. So maybe the next class coming up will take an interest and we can write this grant and do it all over again.
The Iowa Department of Natural Resources has been a rallying force for the promotion of wildlife diversity in the state. One of the restoration projects it has recently been involved with is the reintroduction of North America's largest waterfowl, the trumpeter swan. These majestic birds, which mate for life, used to be a common sight in Iowa's wetlands. Given the support for the present program, they may soon flourish again. Swans have graced the Earth's surface for 30 million years. They have inspired philosophers, poets, artists, and composers. Just as swans have made their impression on us, we have left our mark upon them. It's estimated that by the 1920s, there were fewer than 100 trumpeter swans remaining in the world.
The reason for their decline was basically the drainage of wetland habitat and over-exploitation of the population out there. There were no rules and regulations associated with the taking of trumpeter swans.
They thought that trumpeter swans were extinct, but 69 were discovered, and from those birds we have basically repopulated the continental United States.
On a frigid day in December, Pat and Ron pulled up with their precious cargo from Wisconsin. A pair of trumpeter swans were being delivered to their new home on Lake Terra in Johnston. The excitement mounted as city officials, students from Johnston Middle School, and interested bystanders all gathered to witness the big moment.
I was talking to them about what they're going to do, and they're going to build a platform or kind of a floating island out there for them to nest on. I was wondering whether they're going to do it on the shore or build a box or whatever, but they have a floating island to do it. So.
Where are you folks from? Johnston, what grade? 7th grade. Okay, my name is Ron Andrews. I'm a wildlife biologist for the Department of Natural Resources. I'm also the fortunate one that gets to be involved with the restoration of trumpeter swans to the state of Iowa. We began the project in 1993, and actually it was in 1893, 100 years ago, a century ago, that the last trumpeter swan nested in the state of Iowa up in north central Iowa. Trumpeter swans are North America's largest waterfowl. They'll weigh up to 30 pounds in weight. An 8-foot wingspan is their maximum wingspan. They're a very large bird. And if one of those swans were standing in front of you right now, I'm sure he would be looking you eye to eye, is what they'd be doing, because they stand that tall.
The goal of these trumpeter swans here on Lake Terra is to produce young that will be placed throughout the state in other sites as we attempt to repopulate the state with trumpeter swans.
Sherry, you up to this? Just squeeze tight once again. Both sides, okay?
Got it.
Squeeze real tight. How's his feet? Okay, you're doing good. Take him right down to the edge of the ice here. Slowly for these guys. You're right. That's amazing. Okay, kind of squat down and maybe on, sure, I'll count 3 and just let it go. All right, 1, 2, 3.
We're the ISU Trumpeter Swan Restoration Committee, and we were asked to get involved by the Iowa DNR and on behalf by Ron Andrews. And so a group of concerned students kind of got together, and so here we are trying to help with fundraising and any way we can for the Trumpeter Swan Restoration Program.
If you want to get down to the ethical part of it, they actually belong here. They were here when we got here, and they should be back in the state.
Restoration program for the trumpeter swans is really about appreciation of the wetland habitat that these birds need to occupy.
Well, we hope that, first of all, they will nest. They are known breeders. They have produced in the past. And we hope that come May we'll see a nest begin out here, and come June we'll see some young cygnet swans present out here. And the excitement associated with these things, the attention, the attraction, I think it'll be just great to see this effort and see the public get excited about trumpeting the cause for wetlands because of their presence.
To get people involved, Johnston City Mayor John Verhoff invited the townspeople to take part in a local Name the Swans contest.
There was Adam and Eve and Hansel and Gretel. There was Lancelot and Guinevere. We ended up with Ebb and Flo.
Ebb is the male and can be distinguished by the band on his right leg. Flo is the female and is banded on the left leg. The noble grace and bold spirit of North America's largest waterfowl, the trumpeter swan, combine to create an irresistible beauty. Today, Iowans are ensuring that that beauty lives on, marking the continued connection between us.
The Best of Living in Iowa is funded in part by the Gilchrist Foundation. Founded by Jocelyn Gilchrist, furthering the philanthropic interests of the Gilchrist family in wildlife and conservation, the arts and public broadcasting, and disaster relief.
Funding for this program was provided by Friends, the Iowa Public Television Foundation. Generations of families and friends who feel passionate about the programs they watch on Iowa Public Television.